apologists, they start to stringing together logical arguments. And so there's some fairly famous arguments for the existence of God. There's the teleological argument, the cosmological argument, the ontological argument, and these sorts of things. And all of them, tag, right, the transcendental argument is another one we've tangled with. Every last one of them suffers from the problem of logical fallacies, where, here's an example. Don is a man, I'm a man. Men are fallible, all men are fallible. Okay, that would be the second argument, and then you might come to the conclusion God exists. So that would be a notion of a logical fallacy. You arrive at the conclusion you want, but the steps just don't add up, right? So that's kind of logical fallacies 101, and it turns out that you might start with some facts that are true, but the conclusions you reach from them are false because you've missed a step or you've done this, and you can think of these as sophisticated lies. They're lies that look like you're reasoning well, but in actuality, you dig it down a little bit and they're false. And so we see a lot of these. A common one is an argument from popularity. Something like, oh, well, everybody believes in God, therefore God must exist. That's an argument from popularity. A lot of people believe in God, therefore it must be true. Well, the truth of something doesn't matter who believes it, right? It's not a popularity contest. And a counter example of this is a lot of people believe the Earth was flat at one time. That doesn't mean it was flat then, and it doesn't mean it is flat now. It never has been flat. So who cares, right? It doesn't matter whether a lot of people believe it. Another one is called false dichotomy, where you hear that in the famous lunatic, liar, or Lord. I forget who brought that up.
C.S. Lewis.
Okay. C.S. Lewis. So is Jesus a lunatic? Is he a liar? Is he a Lord? And there's a long, complicated description. He can't be any of those, so he must be Lord. Well, this is actually a false trichotomy, right? Because there's three options given, but a fourth one might be legend, right? So legend is conspicuously absent from this list, and it turns out that that's the most likely one. And so it's a bit of a mind game where you're saying, well, you got to choose between these two or three things, and the real choice is off, not even presented to you. And so that's a bit of a thing. Another one we see all the time is shifting the burden of proof. Atheists doubt the existence of God, and we have yet to see evidence for God, right? So in a sense, we're saying we don't have any compelling reason to believe in God. That's our position. If you are saying that there is a God, you're making a positive claim, and that needs to be backed up with evidence. You have to say, well, if you're claiming that there's a God that exists, you have to say, oh, this is the reason why. So what often happens is the theist will say, oh, well, you have to prove that God doesn't exist. And my sort of canonical counterexample of this is, well, I can claim to be a millionaire, and if I say you can't prove that I'm not a millionaire, does that make me rich?
Yeah. Right?
No. Whether or not you can prove something doesn't have any basis on whether it's true or not. So, this is a matter of convincing someone.
Well, I'd rephrase that.
Okay.
Whether or not you can prove something it does impact whether or not you can tell it's true. It's
right.
Being unable to disprove something doesn't tell you whether or not it's true.
Right. Right. Okay. That's a better way of saying it. There's the argument from incredulity of I can't believe this, so it must be true. So there's a whole mess of these, and I think that atheists learn these, and I think that a serious atheist gets to know these logical fallacies and gets to recognize them because they come up all the time in like advertising and politics and these sorts of things. And in a weird way, I think atheists are better off for this sort of thing. We're more aware of these ways of manipulating people, and we're kind of on top of that. We still make mistakes, right? I make mistakes all the time, but I think I'm better equipped than a lot of folks to recognize these sorts of things and so on. So the third one I want to talk about is often when the theist gets frustrated and can't make any sort of reasonable argument anymore, they get frustrated and they start with the emotional manipulation. Well, God's going to get you is kind of often where it goes. And this is in the category of emotional manipulation and thuggery. And it's a plea to believe in God or Jesus for emotional reasons, which is a terrible reason to believe for anything. You know, God, the existence of God or Jesus or whatever does not depend on your mental state, right? If he did, then we could just say that these things are a figment of my imagination, and we'd be done, right? So reality doesn't depend on your emotional state. This is just a way of bullying somebody, and it's also fundamentally dishonest. So if you haven't gotten it yet, all three of these mechanisms, all three of these pillars of apologetics are dishonest, and therefore there's nothing there. See, and religion is rich with emotional undertones. You know, you think of the emotional associations we have with God. Well, we fear God because he's a big bully, a big thug. We can feel hate of the non-pious and non-believers. That's a common thing. You know, people that aren't kowtowing to the same God. We can be in awe of the power of God. We can feel threatened, or we can feel like we're going to get a reward. God is the judge. We also can feel this notion of fatherhood or being a subject of a lord. So all of these are kind of rich emotional feelings that you feel with God, and these are ways that people get manipulated by this notion of God, is because of all these emotional connotations. With Jesus, it's kind of the opposite. You feel there's a strong association with love and love of humanity. There's an association of guilt, of feeling empathy for Jesus' suffering and the sort of guilt or whatever. There's idolization for how he supposedly dealt with the poor and these sorts of things. So it's almost like a good cop, bad cop thing, you know. No matter what emotion you have, you can either associate it with God or Jesus, and it's almost like a codependent sort of thing, you know. Jesus loves you, but God thinks you're a wretch that needs to be tortured, and Jesus and God are the exact same thing, and it's just very odd, sort of mindfuck as far as I can tell. So
the frustration isn't limited to theists at all. Frustration is a human trait, and I think I'm a perfect example of somebody who's demonstrated that, you know, being able to get frustrated over and over again.
Yeah.
And actually, if I can pause for a second, there's a call that actually deals with that. So it's like right in the middle.
Okay.
We've got Pedja from Germany.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just wanted to say thanks to Matt and all the other guys for the show. Just 5 minutes ago, I used Matt's "You're More Moral Than God" approach, and when I kind of hit the wall, and I want to talk to you about the those three pillars you said that they can be pretty strong. I mean, at some point I just get into this, like I'm hitting the wall with someone. It's like they just don't get that 2 + 2 is 4.
Yeah.
And you know, I know Matt's approach is usually to hang up.
Yeah. See, I mean,
I'm wondering, do you have any, you know, like any advice what to do with them? You know?
Yeah. How do you handle people who just don't get it?
Yeah.
And this goes to what I was talking about regarding frustration. I am frustrated by people who refuse to argue honestly, who want to just move on to the next argument and not acknowledge that their initial point had been refuted. People who constantly repeat, they're just not grasping that I've come up with something that refutes their argument. They just move on to another analogy that's the same as the one before.
Yeah, there's a moving target.
It drives me crazy.
Tactic.
And on occasion, perhaps on too many occasions, perhaps not, I'll just tell them they're an idiot and hang up. Now, the problem with this is that people don't, I don't realize, or I'm not always aware that people don't know me as well as I know me. And obviously, when I reach that point where I'm going to hang up and you're an idiot, I'm not telling them that idiot or moron is the sum total of what I think about them and everything they believe. I'm saying within the context of that argument, they're being an idiot. And oh, by the way, I'm not immune to that. I've been an idiot and a moron and a buffoon many, many times. The difference is that I seem to actually care about whether or not I'm being an idiot and a moron. And when somebody identifies that and says you're being an idiot,